Shri Siddheshvar Paramahamsa Iti Namine. Namo Bhaktivedanta Swami Namine Gaurakarana Swarupaya Radha Krishna Prasthayate. Vanchakalpatubhyascha Kripasindubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnaveva Namo Namaha. Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivedanta. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, this week, we celebrate the birth of a great devotee of the Lord, Lord Jesus Christ. How many of you have any idea what time of year Christ was actually born? Anybody? Do you think it was in December? You're shaking your head no. Does anyone think it's in December that Christ was born? Well, if that means no, then you're right. Do you have any idea when he was born? According to climatologists, the descriptions from the Bible of the weather at the time that Christ took his birth, it was springtime. Like April, May, something like that. April, May, June-ish maybe. You know why we celebrate Christmas on the 25th of December? This was a sneaky outreach idea from the Catholic Church that the 25th of September was a great pagan holiday where everybody, got together and had sex with everybody else and ate all kinds of whatever, and thank you. And so they decided that if they celebrated the birth of Christ on that same day, then they would get everybody that's already in the celebratory kind of mood, and this was part of their outreach to get people involved in celebrating the birth of Christ instead of celebrating some pagan god or another. Does anybody know what Christ means? We call him Jesus Christ. What is Christ? Some have called him Jesus the Christ. What is Christ? Does anyone know? Do you know? No? You don't? No? Do you know? So here we are, celebrating the birth of Jesus Christ, and we don't even know what the hell his name means. Shall I give you the answer? Christ means the Anointed One. The Anointed One. Much as David, you recall, David was anointed to become king, and Christ is the one who, in the family of David, was the anointed one to take David's position spiritually. Christ means the Anointed One. Question. Christ, as we all know, may I ask that if you want to talk, please go outside, okay? Adults, please watch. If you see the children talking, or if you find yourself talking, Go outside. Okay? Okay. Last time I'll say it. I promise. Does anyone know? Everyone knows that where was Christ born? Where was he born? Bethlehem. So why is he called the Nazarene? Why is he known as Jesus of Nazareth? Why isn't he called Jesus of Bethlehem? Anybody know? Does anybody know where Nazareth is? Huh? Nazareth is what? It's a place. It's a city. Or it's a village. Within the district of Galilee. He's also called the Galilean, right? So Nazareth is a town within the district of Galilee. Galilee is divided into two parts, one north, one south. Nazareth is south, in the southern part of Galilee. Bethlehem is north of Galilee by almost 100 miles. At the time, Nazareth was part of Egypt. Galilee was part of Egypt. And at the time, Joseph and Mary lived in Galilee. They lived in the town of Nazareth. Okay? Now, since they lived in the town of Nazareth, why, when Mary was like 8.5 months pregnant, did they all of a sudden decide that they were going to take a 7-day, 100-mile journey across the mountains on a donkey to Bethlehem? Why in the world did they do that? Does anybody know? Do you know? Would you do that? Would you travel from here down to Bicol on a donkey, taking only the trails and no roads? Would you, Faye? Would you do that if you were like had a watermelon inside you? Can you imagine? Well, as you may recall, if you know your history, Rome was the ruler of that area at the time. And Emperor Augustus decided that everyone had to go to the city of their birth in order to take a census, in order to find out who was who, where was where, and what families were who, and so on and so forth. This is the way censuses were taken. Everybody had to travel to the city of their birth. King Herod, took advantage of that to say that on top of coming over here to take part in the census, you also have to pay your taxes. So there were taxes to pay. There was a census to be taken. Does anybody remember what is the kind of nickname for Bethlehem? What's another name for Bethlehem? What is Bethlehem known as? The city. Anyone? The city. You guys should be taking notes, because nobody teaches this. Here the Catholic Church is like, the instigator of all things Christmas, but they don't teach you this. They don't teach you where anything is or what anything happened or whatever. It's so disappointing to be talking in a Catholic country and nobody knows their catechism, you know? But Bethlehem is known and is still known as the city of David. It is called the city of David. Joseph was in the family. He was a descendant of David. And he was born in Bethlehem as well. So they left their village in Nazareth on a donkey on what was at least a 7-day trek with Mary heavy, very heavy with child. I mean, those of you who have had babies can appreciate what it might be like traveling on a donkey for 7 days and nights. You think a horse is bouncy? A donkey is 10 times more bouncy and uncomfortable than a horse. Plus, they don't like to go anywhere you want them to go. So there's that. A very, very onerous, difficult trek for Mary. What to speak of? I mean, Joseph he's got the easy part. He's got to figure out how to make the donkey go forward and, pull the donkey along and so forth. So they have to pick up their stakes and go to Bethlehem, the city of his birth, the city of David. And they get there, and where do they stay? Was there a Hilton in Bethlehem? Maybe a Holiday Inn? Perhaps? Motel 6? Not bloody likely. No, there weren't, again, the hype, the story is there was no room at the inn. There is no inn in ancient Bethlehem. This is 2,000 years ago. At least a few years before Hilton was even born. So there was no inn. Joseph had a lot of family, probably, in Bethlehem. That's where he was born. He was of the family of David, a descendant of David. So, more than likely, there were hundreds of people converging on Bethlehem because all of the family of David that might have been born there. The practice of the time was that since most everybody was either a farmer or raised some kind of animals or something, that maybe they had an extra bedroom or two. And, they would invite relatives, okay, well, you're of our family, you can stay in our spare bedroom. That was what basically stood for an inn. But when they got there, everybody's spare bedroom was taken. There were no spare bedrooms, even among their closest relatives. So, where did they stay? Now, they've spent 7 nights on the road, sleeping in God knows what alongside the road. Mary is as big as a basketball, much bigger. They're very, very tired. One of the relatives, who knows, they may have gone to Uncle George and Uncle Tom and Uncle Dick and Uncle Harry. Nobody had room. But finally, Uncle Jimmy said, well, I don't have any room, but you can stay where? I don't have a spare bedroom, but you can stay where? Where can you stay? You must know this. Huh? Huh? Where? Where? On the table? Well, stable, yes. Horse, no. In those days, stables weren't for horses. Stables were for everybody. The chickens, the cows, the horses, the pigs, the whatever have you, they all stayed in the stable. But now here's the interesting thing that nobody realizes is, where was the stable? Where do you think it was? Where was the stable that Jesus was born in? Was it like a barn out in back of the house? Is that where it was? Yeah, you're nodding your head. You think so? Huh? In the farm. And the farmhouse where they don't have any bedrooms available, so that's a farmhouse, right? Probably most of the homes were farmhouses. Where's the stable? Where is it? Aha, you've heard this story before. Last year. This is how they heated their home. They heated their home with the body heat of the animals that lived underneath the house. They had a big, like, basement barn underneath the house, or stable underneath the house. And because, being warm-blooded animals that they were, or that they are, and being that heat rises, this is one of the ways that they were able to heat their house in the cooler weather. Springtime, as I said, springtime is not quite summer, it's not really hot. So they were able to, now they also may have had, upstairs, they may have had some kind of small iron stove for cooking on or something like that, but it wasn't like we think of as a fireplace or anything like that, because in those days, if you had a fireplace, you pretty much burned your house down. So basically, they relied on the body heat of the animals that were living below them. Yeah. The collective body heat of 40 or 50 animals is going to be quite a bit. It's going to be pretty warm. Very close. Yeah. Yeah. Some are even hotter than humans. So they're in this stable filled with all kinds of animals, goats and chickens and pigs and cows and horses and whatever have you. And maybe Mary and Uncle Jim and Auntie Doris, they get together and they put some hay, down on the floor for Mary. Now, is Mary going to lie down in the hay with her legs up to give birth? Is this what's going to happen? Yes? No? I don't mean any offense. I'm just this is the reality of birth. But the fact is, no, she's not. You know what she's going to do? She's going to squat. She's going to squat. Why? Because it wasn't until doctors decided that they didn't want to keep crawling under and looking to find out if the head was crowning or anything like that. Doctors wanted they wanted to be able to stand up and say, okay, the head is there, it's crowning, and da-da-da-da-da. The idea of a woman lying on her back with her legs open to give birth is a doctor's idea. It's not a woman's idea. And women gave birth 99% of the time squatting down because gravity helps the birth. When you're lying like this on your back, gravity isn't doing a damn thing for you. You got to push and push. That's why they're always saying push, right? You know? But when you're squatting down, gravity helps. And it's baby comes out much more easily. The only thing is that the midwife, or there was no doctor, I'm sure, probably a midwife or some kind of an assistant, or maybe even Joseph himself, we don't know, has to actually get down on the ground and look up and say, okay, this is what's happening, relax. Okay, now it's time to push a little bit, and they've got to be down there on the ground looking up to see what's going on. So, it's a very, very difficult, trying time. So, she gives birth to baby Jesus. And after cutting the umbilical cord, dealing with the afterbirth and everything like that, whatever comes about, what does she do with baby Jesus? What does she do? First thing, what does she do? They clean him off, they cut the umbilical cord, they deal with the afterbirth. What does she do with her baby? It's there in the Bible. It says what she does. You guys are terrible scholars. She wraps her baby in swaddling clothes. Swaddling clothes. Who knows what swaddling is? Even you ladies that have had babies don't know anything about swaddling? Gosh sakes. This is coming back now. After 2,000 years, it's coming back now, swaddling. What it is you wrap the baby so tightly in blanket that the baby can't move. That's called swaddling the baby. Only the head is out. Everything else is all wrapped up tight. The reason why is because the baby is still like back in the womb mentally. And every time, if you don't wrap the baby up tight, every time, if the baby is loose, then every time the baby goes like that, he's lost his balance. He thinks he's falling. And so they start crying. Swaddling keeps babies from crying. You swaddle your baby for like the first year that you have a baby. You young dads, remember that, Bam. Remember that. You swaddle the baby for the first year. Okay? This keeps the baby comfortable, keeps the baby thinking that, it's okay. I'm not going this way or going that way, or, because they're not used to having any room. They're used to being very tightly wrapped up within the mother's womb. So, Mother Mary wraps her new baby in swaddling clothes. And then what do they do with the new baby? Anybody want to just make a guess? Huh? Bed sheets? Oh, breastfeeding. Well, yeah, that goes with the swaddling. You swaddle, you breastfeed. The head is there for that purpose. Okay? But that's a reasonable answer to my question. Not the answer I was looking for, however. They put baby Jesus in Huh? A cradle? I don't think so. They're in a stable. Where do they put baby Jesus? Baby Jesus breastfed, fell asleep, sleeping. Where do we put baby Jesus? Huh? Huh? Where? I see your lips moving. No basket. No, no. When the angel appeared before the sheep herders and they all went, ah! And the angel appeared, he said, I bring tidings of great joy. Look for a baby in swaddling clothes in a manger. Who can tell me what a manger is? What is a manger? Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, what is a manger? We grew up with this story. Come on, you guys. Is it a beautiful little cross-legged thing with a little hay in it and the baby lies in there like you see on the thing with Joseph and Mary standing and looking at the baby and the baby's in their little thing, looks like a little bed. Is that a manger? How many of you speak Italian? Anybody? Anybody speaks Italian? Manger comes from Latin, and the closest word that I can think of for it is in Italian. If you have an Italian mother-in-law and you go to the Italian mother-in-law house, she's going to say, sit at the table, mangia. Go ahead, please. I make the spaghetti all day long. Mangia. It means to eat. It is a feeding trough for the animals. For the pigs, the cows, the horses, they eat in the manger, the feeding trough. Okay? I don't speak Filipino very well, so I'll take your word for it. So he was placed in a sabsaban, a feeding trough, where all the animals are fed. You know, at certain times they'll have hay and stuff in there for the horses to eat, and sometimes, like once a day, they'll bring out the garbage from the house and fill it with water and slop the pigs in that same manger, that feeding trough. Not exactly, you know, the wonderful, comfortable bed that we see in the settings with the Jesus story, right? Long. I mean, you know, Christ was like over here or over here. You know, he only took up this much room, and the manger itself is like really long because all the animals had to feed on both sides. So the baby Christ is in a feeding trough. This is the humility that Lord Chaitanya speaks about when he says we must become more humble than a blade of grass. Can you imagine a blade of grass on the stable floor or the manger, this filthy manger that all the animals have been eating out of? This is the humility that Christ brought to as an example for the Jewish people to get something from it. They didn't really understand it. They realized it was a humble birth, but you know, they don't really appreciate, generally speaking, they don't appreciate just how humble it was. Now, all the heavenly host celebrated the coming of Christ. They appeared before the herders, the goat herders and the sheep herders, and they invited them all to come down to Bethlehem and witness the little drummer boy. They were all there to witness this amazing king born in this humble situation. And then, maybe the same day, maybe early the next day, 3 wise men appear from the east. And the legend would have us believe that they were just looking up in the sky from their home in India someplace or wherever, Pakistan, where it's now present Pakistan or whatever, and saying, "Oh, look, there's a star. Let us follow that star and go find the great king who is being born." Where's the first place they stop? When they get to Bethlehem, where's the first place they stop? Actually, it's not Bethlehem. They get to, I guess it's Jerusalem. Where was the first place they stopped? They stopped at the palace of King Herod. And they said, "We understand that a great king has taken his birth in your land. Can you direct us to where this is taking place?" Now, don't you think, first of all, Herod, like King Kamsa, wanted nothing to do with anybody that would call themselves a king, and wanted more than anything to kill this new king. Wouldn't you think that if there was some kind of a giant star shining above the stable where Christ was born, that Herod and all of his soldiers would be there in an instant? If it was that easy? And if it was that easy, why did the 3 wise men come to see Herod to find out exactly where it was? The star that is spoken of is not some kind of a exploding planet or some kind of a thing that is visible in the sky. We must understand that at least one of these kings, these 3 wise men, were astrologers. And they knew from the stars that this was happening in this place. They didn't know exactly where, but they knew that in this area that this event was happening. They were astrologers. And from the charts of the cosmos, they could tell that this great event was taking place. They came to the stable where all the people were gathered, and the drummer boy might have been playing his drum and so forth. And they got down from their camels and they offered this little baby the most precious things in the world. Frankincense was worth 20 times more than gold at the time because it grew only in certain places and they had to travel for thousands of miles to get it. Myrrh, the same. And of course, gold speaks for itself. 3 of the most valuable commodities on the planet. And they offered these to the Christ child. Just imagine. These gentlemen are kings. They are wise men. They are royalty from another country. It would take a lot for them to travel for perhaps thousands of miles, bearing these amazing valuables to offer to this great king that they could see in their charts was being born. There is nothing in the Bible that says this, but from the time that Christ was 12 until the time he returns, when he's about 32, there is nothing written. It would make sense to me, and this is not history, but it would make sense to me if one of the 3 kings, one of the 3 wise men, said when he enters manhood, have him come and see me. Have him come and see me, and I will teach him the ways of a devotee. At this point, there is nothing in the Bible about this, unless it's in the Vatican archives. We don't know. But, those years are, in my opinion, most likely spent at the feet of a spiritual master. So, now you know everything. Now you know everything about the birth of Lord Jesus Christ, the Son of God. And we can rejoice, just as the whole world rejoices in his taking birth at that time, in that place, for those people. The pure devotee appears and gives knowledge according to time, place, and circumstance. And this is how we understand the teachings of the Bible, the teachings of Lord Jesus. So Merry Christmas to you all. Namaste. Are there any questions? Do you feel you learned anything? Cool. Now, next time somebody asks you, why was he called a Nazarene, you'll know. Haribo. Yeah.
Haribo. Is one of the 3 wise men the one who teaches Jesus Christ how to love God?
Let me explain this as I understand it in the way that I saw my own spiritual master. One would think, we would have a tendency to think that, well, Jesus, Son of God, he was born with love of God. He's already filled with that love. Okay? When I met Prabhupada, He was very much full of love of God. But he spent 2 years learning from A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami and teaching his disciples sadhana bhakti. How do you get to that point of love of God? He was already enlightened, but he learned from his spiritual master the steps that are required in sadhana bhakti to get there. This is what a guru would teach someone like Christ, for those many years. This is what you teach. This is how you teach. This is what you do. This is how you give love of God to your disciples. Where did the idea of disciples come from? I don't know that much about the Jewish religion, but I don't know anything about, a rabbi taking disciples. That does not sound familiar to me. I've never heard of that. So where did the idea of Christ having disciples, where did that come from? That's something that's practiced by the gurus of the East, by the pure devotees. These, he taught, again, according to time, place, and circumstance. He taught that the first commandment is that you love God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your strength. And the second is like unto it, that you love your neighbor even as you love yourself. This is about as much as the people of the time could understand, could really take. Even now, today, we have difficulty sometimes understanding the deeper meaning of this commandment. So, Christ gave, he taught by example, and he gave even in his persecution and in his crucifixion, he taught. He was teaching that even death cannot slow the pure devotee of God. Even death is not more powerful than love of God. By his example, he taught this. Does that answer your question? Are there any other questions? Thank you very much.